going to be about 30 minutes late. And so we'll do a roll call at, and also Tom will not be here also, but Cheryl Robertson's with us, and Cindy Maynard's with us. Hi, Cindy.
Derek.
Lori Osher and myself. And so let's just get it started, and we're going to go to number 2. Recreation and Open Space Ordinance Revision, reference tobacco, marijuana, and vaping. So Sophie, are you taking this one, or?
No, she's waiting for me.
Oh, hey!
That was the sly smile. So good evening, everyone. Mitch Stone, Parks and Rec Director here. So we were approached, well, probably before COVID, from Bangor Public Health. Roxanne Dubé had contacted us about our ordinance that we had written for outdoor, our open spaces and our trails. And she had contacted us because in there we have part of that ordinance is about smoking, and they had some grant funding and asked that since we had created it, was it okay for her to check with her grant folks to see if this matched the model that they were looking for to be able to give us some grant funding for signage and things like that. When she came back to us, she notified us that basically everything looked great except for a definition of smoking and some clear examples. So what ultimately this needs to be done by September 30th to qualify for the grant fund. We saw them as changes that were pretty minor, just really additions. We didn't have to change much to the wording, and that the positive piece is to be able to do some education and that sort of thing, especially around our parks and open spaces and playgrounds and things like that, to be able to have some more signage and educational. So I don't think that any of this had got to you folks, but if I can, it did. So you guys have that. I know without rereading it, basically the underlined information is the new stuff, and I think there's only 1 or 2 things that were crossed out just for grammatical pieces, and barring me reading through it, I guess we were just looking for some guidance to see what folks thought about it.
I have a question. I'm going to play devil's advocate. But first of all, the part number 1, where we have the definition of smoking, it's really confusing. It needs to be redrafted a little bit just to make it a little bit more concise. And I have underlined some things. I had to ask my son what a dab was, and because I did not know what a dab was. So I grabbed my 18-year-old who knew what a dab was. And dabs it's under not limited to edibles and dabs, but dabs are also smoked. Edibles are eaten, dabs are smoked. So that whole thing needs to be kind of overhauled. I feel like it needs to be overhauled a little bit for clarity. I have a question, and here's really seriously, I understand the importance of this, and I don't want, kids smoking pot and stuff in our public places. But my question is, there are people out there who have medicinal cards, and that for them, marijuana is a medicine. I don't think they'd be doing it in a public place, but I just wondered, and like I said, devil's advocate, if you ban a medicine from people, would you have to ban all medicines? Would you have to really think about what if somebody just said, hey, this is a medicine for me, this is the time of day I take it, so I guess that's what I said, like devil's advocate, how would that translate is a better way to say that.
So I'm going to interject after I told Mitch I was going to have him do this. But I think, I guess I need more clarity than this needs an overhaul, because when I read this, it's not confusing to me. So
Okay,
I
that's
just
good.
need a little bit more. I'm not saying I'm right. I just mean
No,
I need more.
I know where the parts are that are unclear to me, so I can do that for you.
And then the second thing is, remember, we are talking about this for public parks and open spaces that have children and families. And quite honestly, if somebody is eating their favorite hot brownie and not doing anything other than having a little piece of brownie, nobody is ever going to even know about it. This is for when people are behaving in ways that would cause other people to be concerned, right? That's why that's important. And the smoking, I think the thought is, what we're trying to say is, we don't care what you've got rolled up or in your pipe. You're not going to do any of that here, because we don't want that around kids, period. And if we want to change that general idea, then we want to talk about the whole piece of the ordinance, Cheryl, because that's kind of the premise of the whole ordinance, is that this is supposed to be a place that's free from chemicals and things like that.
Exactly. And I was just, it was more of a, you know, an argument, you know, if somebody said, well, this is my medicine, I mean, because we do have medicinal, you know, we do have a medicinal quality to this in our state. The parts that were confusing for me was the first sentence, which kind of went on about, and I'm just going to start with, any other lighted or heated tobacco or plant product intended for inhalation, including hookahs and marijuana. Hookahs are not something that you smoke, it's something you smoke out of. So I was thinking that was a plant, I thought it was following plant product intended for inhalation, including, and it should, like, tobacco and marijuana, or, you know, hookahs is the actual thing that you smoke out of. So that kind of didn't make sense to me.
So maybe this is showing my naivete. I don't. So if perhaps hookah goes up by pipe or joint,
Yeah.
and it's just including marijuana.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of hash, there's all kinds of stuff that you can smoke.
Those are kind of plant products, right?
Right.
Including marijuana, whether natural or synthetic, in any manner or in any form.
Right.
Does that work?
Yeah. And then, and I know it's just, it feels like overkill, but I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me. But then when it says non-smoked marijuana products, including but not limited to edibles and dabs, and that's where I had to go ask my son what a dab was. Dabs are not edibles. So those are smoked. That's a smoked, it's a concentrated THC product. He said when people have dabs, it looks like they're smoking crack cocaine. I went, oh, that's lovely. So it's not a non-smoked marijuana product. It is a smoked marijuana product. I know, I had to ask, Sophie. I didn't know either.
Does everybody else kind of agree? I mean, that sounds really reasonable and easy to fix. Our resident drafter is in the bottom corner of my screen, Megan Mazzilla.
Oh, hi, Megan.
Continue on.
Yeah, I think it all sounds good. I think the more we have in there, the better, and clarity is definitely there. So, short of just moving a couple things into different spots, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Mitch, I was just wondering, is the grant just for signage?
It's for signage, education, and I'm trying to remember maybe a few other things on that, but the main thing was signage. So, and it was up to $1,000. So.
Oh, okay.
Megan, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What's a snoo?
So I was unsure of a lot of these things as well. We had gotten some guidance that I pulled from to write this based on
Okay.
the information from the grant. So they had suggested some of these things, and I included those because they were
Okay.
looking for specifics. So
Snoo is a type of moist powdered tobacco typically held in the mouth between the lips and gums.
Okay. I forgot to ask Alex what a
That
snoo was.
When I was a kid, that was called chew.
The chew is in there. Chews and snooze. Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
And I would like, Megan worked pretty hard on this and I kind of dropped it on her in the last minute. So I truly appreciate what she was able to come up with. So.
Thank you, Meg.
So if people are in general okay with it, and those are minor revisions and some education, are you guys all set for us to take this to call a public hearing for the September meeting and
Yes.
discuss it then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, consider it done.
Great. Moving on now to Parks and Recreation's operations update.
So Sophie had come to me and wanted me to take some time to talk a little bit about what Parks and Rec has been up to, kind of how we've been operating. We were at the last community development meeting and we were going to talk about a few things and that got cut short. We thought it was an opportunity to be able to discuss things and also talk a little bit about how Parks and Rec is kind of operating right now with both Megan and I as part of that department. So maybe for the public, whoever's watching, that they can understand that a little bit different because, you guys went through the budget process. So you are aware of it, but we're 3 months into it. So I can kind of give you an update as well on that. And then we're going to kind of run right through these and Megan's going to talk about a few things that she's done. And then I'm going to kind of turn around and finish up at the end. But all in all, when we brought Megan on board, the idea behind this was that Megan was going to, at least at the beginning, she was going to work through and be that kind of person on the ground doing the work. And I was going to take a much more administrative role and kind of higher level, 10,000 feet policies, that sort of thing, and just looking at those things. I will say that I guess I'm shooting myself in the foot by saying I'm surprised at how well she's doing because I really did assume that she was going to be this good. But the ability and the quickness in which she's picking things up has been frankly amazing. And her ability to really ask questions and understand how our community works and how things work within the town has really been it's been great because it's allowed me to actually take a little bit more hands off much earlier than I really had expected. We are working very close together. We share an office, although we're not in the office together right now because this would be difficult to Zoom together. We have done it once and we'll never do that again. We're in constant communication about things, but really Megan has been able to take the reins with a lot of these projects and a lot of the research and really go with it, which has been great. I will also say the other side to this is that it's also been nice to have a different voice in the department. When you do things by yourself over and over again, sometimes it's hard to keep finding those other things that you need to look at. And she's, by asking what she seems are mundane questions, have been very helpful for me to look at things maybe slightly different. So I think we have been working very well to try to do that. And that leads into kind of an overarching, we're operating in a new world, in a crazy world, in which we are on a Zoom meeting because we can't have any sort of council meeting. And yet Parks and Rec's job is to bring community together and do these events and do all this stuff. So trying to figure out how we can access the community and work within the guidelines that are out there in a safe way is all new. And it really is taking much different turns in every way, and we're really reliant and kind of beholden to decisions that other folks are making, especially during this time of year. As we looked at the summer, and then obviously we'll talk a little bit more about the fall, but with things like the school and how they're going to operate and how that affects us, what are changing in the state, the conversations that you folks are having and looking at the university are very similar to the conversations we're having with working with our partner in the university, and what things look like and how we are managing those. So I think from a big overview, COVID's a challenge. I think we all know that, but it really is a situation where we have plans upon plans upon plans. And by the time we implement those plans, all the plans we had, probably we've changed them so many times to get to where we are that it's difficult. But the beauty is that we've been able to plan ahead of time. We've been able to have these conversations and look at different things so that we can be nimble. And that's what adding Megan to this has been able to do for Parks and Rec. But also my role in community development has allowed me to be able to be involved in the state conversations, not only in Parks and Rec, but in the community development world. And they're making decisions. They're the ones that are creating guidelines. The state Department of Economic and Community Development are the ones that are coming up with the guidelines. So being able to have that information and be able to take it in and get a lot of this stuff to understand why decisions are being made has been helpful for us to be able to really look at what we can do and what we can't do and what's safe and what isn't. And I think for us, our goal is first and foremost is serving this community in a safe way. And to be fair, trying to get the kids to be able to go back to school in a safe place, because one of the challenges that we have is as people go back to school, the workforce is challenged with how do we do that in a hybrid model? How do we do that in a remote learning model? And if we make the right steps and are not rushing into this, can we be part of the solution and not spread this quicker than possible if we were to choose to say, hey, we're going to run all these programs and get all these kids together? So our goal from the beginning with this has really been, how do we methodically walk through this, making sure things are safe, not rushing into it, and providing something, and also keeping in mind, how do we also look at this? So if we can expand, can we expand? But if we have to contract, how do we contract without causing too many issues? So that's kind of been the basis of how we've set up this summer and moving into the fall. I'm going to turn it over to Megan because she's going to talk a little bit about the summer program and some of the work she's been doing since she came on. So.
Yep, so the summer program this year ran for 6 weeks, and it was a free outdoor program for kids ages kindergarten through 5th grade that they were able to sign up for. We had 2 sessions, one closer to the morning and one closer to the afternoon, and we implemented every COVID protocol we could. Everyone wore masks, staff and children included. All children or all parents of children that were dropping off were asked questions to make sure that they were healthy and they were being able to come to the program. And the things we did were low activity. So they were all lawn games and similar low activity games where we could take what they were using and clean every single item, whether it be like Frisbee for can jam or the lawn dart that was plastic. We were able to clean all of those. So we knew that the next child playing with it would have a safe, clean item. The challenges lied in the kids learning the protocols, because some of these kids probably had never been out before. Maybe they were had the ability to stay at home during this whole thing and only wore masks in practice. So getting them to interact with each other while still wearing the masks, while keeping their 6 feet, that it was interesting to see the growth and kids coming later on in the summer, showing us their new masks, showing their new colors, new superheroes and things on their masks. The older kids, because it wasn't separate sessions in terms of ages. We allowed any age to sign up for any session. This kept siblings together, which turned out to be a helpful thing because the older kids ended up kind of guiding the younger kids as well to respect those 6 foot when maybe they started stepping too close. So that was really nice to see that they're getting it and that they do want to be careful. And that was really great to see. Overall, I think it was a really great success. There were some days where there weren't as many, but it was hot. We averaged around 6 kids, capping it at 10 to keep that COVID requirement. But yeah, overall, I thought it was pretty solid. And we were able to keep those guidelines the entire time. There wasn't any leniency, even though they were there every single week. They didn't think all this was comfortable. It was more getting comfortable with the guidelines instead of getting used to just being there. Does anyone have any questions about the program or things that went on?
I have a question about the CDC guidelines, Megan, but I think it might be a better question for fall programming planning efforts, because I had heard that CDC has reduced their distance with kids to 3 feet, but that might just be schools. But
Yeah.
what do you think? What have you heard that too, or
they did talk about that in schools, and it was one of those things where they said, if you have to, we're okay with that, but really we like 6 feet. And I know I had spoken with the superintendent, and that question came up, and she said we're going with the 6 feet, not with a 3 feet. But that has been really directed towards schools to try to figure out a way to allow them to operate. And it's we'd like you to have 6 feet, but if 3, that's the minimum that you'd have to have type of thing. But we're really looking at that 6 feet. In fact, the other recommendations is with heavy activity without masks on, they're talking about 14 feet. So there's depending upon what you're doing. And I think, to be fair, that's part of the challenge, is that when you look at these guidelines, somebody says, oh, you can have 100 people outside. Well, you can. That's like if you have everybody 6 feet apart in a circle sitting, watching something happen and not moving and talking to anybody, not 100 people playing soccer, So trying to balance those things and work through them are a challenge, to be fair. So.
Yes, I was kind of curious if it had extended into Parks and Rec, because I did hear about the 3 feet distance, and of course the protocols are changing all the time too, so that doesn't make it any easier for.
And everything I spoke about, we planned all that in June, so we had stuck with those June guidelines of that time throughout the program. So there was many changes between then and now. So you're right.
Meg, given the situation about what we're dealing with, it's at least refreshing to be able to know that we were able to provide something for the kids to play with. I know people get frustrated and may assume that there's not enough going on, but this is a difficult thing. I mean, we can simply take this, like a family gathering at a wedding, and look what it's just exploded into this massive thing that we don't even know what the ramifications are going to be from that. So to be able to just give something for the kids to do is great, and I commend that you really took the COVID-19 steps to make it happen, and that's just great on you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are
there anybody else that wants to weigh in?
I just thank you very much for telling us about the summer program. You said that you were planning that it could be up to 10, but
yes. So when we did signups, our roster maxed out at 10. So we would only have 10 children, and that would be our pod. And I had me and a volunteer that was coordinated through the university to work on cleaning everything and kind of keep making sure that the kids were spaced out to kind of just control the environment there. But only 10 kids per sign up, yes.
And then the two of you were the leaders of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you had 6 max, or you had 6 average?
Just average. There were some really hot days we had where the humidity was pretty bad. And it being a free program, people could, might skip a week here and there because they might have something else going on and things. And it was an easy adjustment for families, I'm sure. So some days we had, I think the most I had was 8 at one time. And then some days we had closer to 3 or 4, but average about 6. So they were throughout the whole program on both sessions, we did hit that 6-month number more often than not.
Thank you very much.
Looked like, yep.
I would also just add that with this program, we had built in a rain date of Thursday. So it was a Wednesday program. And we said if it rained on Wednesday, we would do it on Thursday. So people knew up front. And I think we did have to switch it a couple times. And those were a couple of the low days because parents, and they came out and said, we just can't go on Thursday, which was fine. But we were trying to figure out a way to make sure it happened at least once a week.
Great.
That this demonstrated for us is that we have a large group in our community that is not interested in going out and doing things in groups. And we've heard that, in various other ways at council. But there still is a need for kids to have a place to be able to safely socialize and to run around and burn off some energy and some calories. And so I think as we move forward, the goal is to adapt and be flexible and meet the needs that are not being met, to try to be a wraparound as opposed to a primary service deliverer. I think the other goal that we have is to maintain or reduce the costs associated with the programs. There, in some ways we've got to keep some of the costs, but the thought being this is definitely not a time to add financial draws on people's household incomes.
Great. I want to let everybody know that Councilor Coons has joined us. Does anybody have anything else additional?
Sorry for coming in late. Work.
Crazy work.
Yeah, crazy.
All right. So Mitch, continue.
So Megan's she's gonna move on to trails and open spaces.
Yep. So I'm going to start that off for everyone. Something that I worked on a bit was a interactive map for the town. So something that was brought to me when I first came on was with the new set of eyes, like Mitch had mentioned, was the website and what can we change or what can we add and what can we improve on to make it a bit more interactive. And that was something I took kind of literally and made an interactive map because Parks and Recreation is very interactive. If you can, Sophie, if we want, we can share my screen and I have it pulled up if we want to look at that.
Well, behind the town office, we'll do
It's
that
allowed.
for you.
Okay, so should be this one. So this is the website. This is the Parks and Recreation page. So we can see that there's a new tab here for the interactive map. And if we click that, it brings you to kind of a stripped back Google map. So we notice that the streets, if we zoom in, are still all labeled so you know where you are, but things like the town office and businesses are pulled back. So these are points that I've made and I've put in of things that we own and things that we can visit. We have Webster Park with a picture here and a description. This, in my thought process of creating this, was if you wanted to go out and go for a walk, sit at a park, enjoy the outdoors, it's a very brief description. With where parking is located, and it's very easy to add more pictures and a longer description to this. It's continually editable. It's not something we have to take down and put back up. We can edit on the fly as things change. So, yep, in doing that, that was the idea behind this. So something like Sklar Park over here, I've changed to a little hiker, and we can see a similar thing here. And this is for all of the town-owned spaces that was under my Parks and Recreation list that I had. So Webster Park was one of them. Sklar Park is here. It goes all the way up to Gould's Landing. If you zoom out over here, and then some of our sports fields as well. Martin Park, I believe, is this one. Yep. So it has all our sports fields as that as well. So it makes a bit more easier for someone maybe new to the area or someone looking to explore an area that they've been in for a long time visually. Because before it was just a list, we still have that list, and to expand upon that list and give histories behind things, I think it would be something that people would be interested in having access to. But this takes that list and makes it a bit more interactable. So having this, I think, will kind of make it easier to visit these places. And they are so much more popular now that people want to go out more and see these things, given that access to public spaces have changed.
Megan, quick question.
Mhm.
First of all, this is fantastic. Thank you. If you click on the list, though, like if I click Brownies Park, will it automatically highlight? If I click over here on the list,
Yep. So if I scroll down to something,
like Sklar Park,
Union
hey,
Street
where's
down
that?
here,
Click on
it'll
that.
jump right down to Union Street
Perfect.
on the points.
Great.
Yes.
Well done.
So, and this is on Google. It's just a Google map, and this is the default that it's come up to. But if you were more curious in terms of land, what the surrounding area looks like, that's changeable for anyone. This is not me editing it, and this is not going to stay like that. It'll revert back when you refresh the page or click. Someone new clicks it. So if you're the type of person that needs to see, you know, you can zoom in on a typical Google map and you can see all these places and things if you're someone that wanted to do that. So it's not, yeah, so it's easier to see, I think, was the point there. Yeah.
I like this. I didn't know we had so many places around town.
I think this is great. Really think.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is actually a really good job, Meg. It would be almost kind of like, even as we progress further down the road, how places take things like this and create little passport things where people could create their own little passport experience thing. So, you know, everybody in the town could say that they visited all the sites. So this is great. I love it. I'm glad you're doing this. Thank you.
So something that Mitch has been working on kind of moving forward as well, and I can pull it up, was the 30-mile loop. That's here. I made just a picture of that here. These blue lines are where our town border ends, roughly. And these red points are things that aren't our property.
Meg, we can't see that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Share a new screen for that.
I think I have to change the screen I'm sharing.
Oh, we just saw it 2 seconds ago.
Oh, you did? Let me.
Now it's still
Gone
back.
now.
It's on the back on the map now.
It's on the back of the map now.
No, it's sorry. It's back on the first map you were showing us.
Yes.
For a
So
moment,
can you see it now?
No, just no.
You need to stop sharing this screen and then share a new screen and select that window. I'm sorry, it's weird.
That's all right. Better?
There it is.
Excellent. Okay. So this is a 30-mile loop, which is something that Mitch had been working on. These blue lines are where our town ends, roughly. So Old Town and Bangor would be down here. These red sections are a part that we do not own. And the black sections here are parts that our parks overlap as well. So Mitch, I don't know if you want to talk more about this or. I can.
I absolutely. So
Okay.
I had brought this to you kind of a while ago, and we had talked about this idea of a 30-mile loop and working with obviously the other towns. And like everything, we've been working through it, and kind of this, we were waiting for the lease opportunity or easement opportunity that we worked with the lawyer to create. Those came about late last fall, and we were looking at trying to do things this winter, and like everything else, the COVID has hit, and we haven't really moved forward on that. But the idea, I think one of the things that we really want to be able to do is kind of solidify those connection points with our RDR property in and I don't know, in the area of behind the high school, Scholar Park, Coburn area. Those three have very few properties in between them that are connecting them that we would need an agreement or an easement on. So one of our goals this year is to solidify those agreements and connect those properties with a consistent and something that we possess. There are some there that the land trust has, and we would work with them. But really trying to figure out a way to so that we control them and can work with the landowner to make sure they're a consistent thing. The challenge all the time with this, and one of the reasons why we talked about a 30-mile loop, is that in these areas there are multiple trails. Our goal is not to make every trail part of an easement. The goal is that you would have one, as I call it, a super highway that one could follow, that we would maintain, and there may be other trails off of it, but that you could consistently find this. Now, early on, I've had conversations with VZ, and they've been working very hard at kind of updating their Buck Hill trails, and that's kind of where this would come in, over behind Silver's Garage. I've had conversations with the city of Bangor Parks and Rec. They were all for it as it goes through city forest. And then the VZ Railroad bed, those pieces are there from Orono Bogwalk area, Bangor City Forest, all the way over to Old Town. That's the VZ Railroad bed that the land trust is already, it's there. They finished it all the way through to Kirkland Ave in Old Town. If you come out of Kirkland and you head towards basically Stillwater on Kirkland, you hit Bennick Road, and that gets you right back into town. The goal with this is really to start with what are the easiest places that we can make this happen. And some of that would be on roads. So the idea is, somebody wanted to go for a bike ride, say, and they wanted to start in Bangor City Forest, they could literally end up downtown and have have lunch after their ride, and then continue on and go back to the Bangor City Forest. Or likewise, somebody could start in Orono and go to the Bangor City Forest and come back around. When you look at it in totality, it's a pretty big project, and it's going to take some time. And that's why looking at these little bits this year, I think, will help start that along. We are, like, those red dots are where we're looking at. And so I believe, if I think correctly, I think there's only about 6 property owners between Scholar Park and Coburn. Okay, so that's a reasonable number to try to work with, as these things can take time to get. So that's kind of our goal there, in trying to get this, because that really will connect. If you look at it, will connect all your neighborhoods. They go behind every neighborhood on this side of Stillwater and the Penobscot. And if you go down the river trail from there and you get over to Park Street, you can get out to the university trails on the other side, which connect those neighborhoods in as well. So the goal was to try to figure out a way to connect everybody to the larger trail. And that's what this is.
Mitch, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
The parts of the trail, this is also fantastic. I love this stuff. I think we all do. But the parts of the trail that are going to be on the roads that we talked about, are we exploring the possibility of having designated bike paths painted bike lanes painted on that? Any sort of indication? Also, would there be signage for that? Because nothing is more appealing than seeing these awesome little signs like, "Hey, there's this awesome thing that you just happened upon." You know?
So certainly some of this is the case. To be honest with you, most of the road stuff is not in our is not in our towns. So we would be working with other folks. Old Town has a big stretch, and there'd be a little bit of a stretch in the VZ Bangor area to get across the highway. And those were the two things. So Kirkland Road goes under the highway, which is great. We would be, in this model, you'd be using Chase Road, which is a little bit less traveled to get across the highway there. That's a barrier to this. The people struggle with the, Forest Ave isn't bad, but it's in the middle, but some of the other ones are tough to get across. So yes, I think part of this whole thing would be signage at the end and working with the other communities to do that, and looking into how do we make it work on these roads. Most of these roads are actually pretty heavily traveled with bike traffic already. When you go out to Kirkland Road, that you have the opportunity there to go out into the university trails out by Perch Pond, and there's a ton of. I see it all the time coming in Bennick Road. The folks that are riding their bikes out Bennick Road to get out that way. So it's a pretty heavily rided. I don't envision, now it could happen. I don't envision this as being a hiked trail. The hiking part probably would be shorter parts to this, but I think the bike piece would be a bigger part of this. But certainly you could walk it and bike it or whatever. So.
And a follow-up to Sam's question too is because I know I'm on Bennick Road, and I've actually I think it was last summer that we rode that. We rode all the way down to Five Guys on Stillwater and had lunch, but we were on our bikes. So I know that those trails are accessible now. Some of them are, but what makes it really hard sometimes is there is no bike lane on some of the roads. There's no bike lane on Bennick Road, and it'd be nice to have that as a future goal, like Sam said, to have some some actual painted bike lanes for people. And when Sam said the signage, the Downeast, there's a Downeast Sunrise Trail in Hancock, Washington County, and they have just little signs that just kind of say, point in that direction, and I've never done it, but it would be nice to have some signage.
So certainly that's going to be part of it, and I think that's part of the process. And there's lots of different ways that we'll make that happen. I have been on the Sunrise Trail numerous times, so I understand what you're talking about, and they do it differently everywhere. But and I think that would be the key, is that this trail would be specific to a certain, no matter where you are on it. This is the 30-mile loop trail or whatever we market it. But I agree that working through these things as we go, these pieces of the puzzle are part of that.
I know we're looking also at a greater Orono, town of Orono signage thing too. It'd be nice if there was maybe some sort of symbiotic design here, sort of nice to have that theme continue.
So Sam, right now, we have been working with all of our playgrounds, parks. The signage that we've been creating have all been working closely with, if you see signs in the parking lot and things like that, same color scheme, same fonts, same designs, to try to work with those things together. And I think I see Sophie raising her hand, so I'll let her speak because it must be important.
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to get people's attention. I tried raising my hand on the participant thing, but it didn't work. What I wanted to say was just to kind of dovetail in with what you were talking about, Sam. I think this is a layered approach, and I do think that it's kind of like when we look at our gateway signs, we're kind of hopefully stuck in a color palette here that we can put lots of different things on, but the goal is for us to have it be very clear to people before they even read signs, whether it's public or not. when we start thinking about creating trails, before we really publicize them, we have to make sure that we've got them adequately, not just the safety of the trail itself, but adequately marked with directional signage. So directional signage becomes the first kind of important thing. And then if I make it through, the goal is to then have interpretive signage. And that's where we would layer in the more of the place items in Orono, the things that are important, the stories that we can tell, the things that people see, which is the goal.
That all makes perfect sense, and I absolutely agree with your approach in that. And directional is really important. One wrong turn when you come out of Kirkland, you'll end up in Medway, and they'll say, "I thought it was a 30-mile ride," but great.
So if there aren't any more questions about that, I will continue on to give a little bit of an update on Gould's Landing and Neto Savoy Park. I think it's been a little bit of time since we've discussed it. So what part of the first Healthy Maine grant that we got, we were able to get hire a person to work out. We got a person from Seaboard Securities. They are providing somebody 40 hours a week to be out there. The way that we've split that up is a 1 to 5 Monday through Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is a 9 to 5 at the heavier times. Their job really is to help people out there, make sure folks are parking in the parking spots, and working through that. I believe that the last update to the permit is that the permits are available and everybody must have one to park in the permit only spots, but anybody can get them. You just have to go online and fill out the information. We did, early on, we did track that. We still are. I have not looked at it lately, but it was over 50% of the folks aren't from Orono that are getting the permits. But what's helped is that we are getting the phone calls and people are aware that they need to have permits. So they're calling and saying, how do I do this? I want to do things right. And by having, so a lot happened there in the process of this whole thing. Before COVID happened, our plan was to stripe it, get the parking spots, and try to figure out a way to manage those parking spots to see how that worked. Once COVID hit, lots of things changed. Because we were worried about numbers of people and that sort of thing. What we have found is with the parking spaces we have, and with people parking in the parking spaces and nowhere else, we're able to control kind of the volume out there. Part of this challenge, and I see Sophie moving forward in her seat, but part of this challenge is that we've hired somebody on a grant this year. And it's about $10,000 for the summer to have somebody 40 hours a week out there. What we're a little concerned about is what does this look like next year without that $10,000 grant money and having somebody out there that's reminding people to park in those spots and those sorts of things. I don't know if you want to add to that, Sophie.
I just want to say that the primary reason or purpose for the individual that's out at the park right now is around ensuring public health and safety. It's about reminding people around social distance. It's about limiting the numbers that are in the park. We know from history that on hot days, that park is just full of people. And people aren't parking in the parking spots, and having parking spots lined and nobody out there to call the police when somebody wants to park illegally makes it difficult to control those numbers. So I don't want people to think that we have solved the perennial concern of the neighbors that are out there on a long-term basis, because what we have is a one-year stopgap, and we're not sure how we can manage it going forward, because I don't think the permits and the striping alone are what is solving the problem. Am I making sense?
So I mean, to follow, could just kind of wrap that up is that I think that obviously having somebody out there has been very helpful with that. We have, we've had a lot of interaction with people calling us about what the rules are, which is positive, and wanting to do that. We are getting there are enough spaces. We need more spaces out there, but the reality is, if you have more spaces, then you have too many people in the park. So, it's how much you can manage out there. I think all in all, we've been, with that person, been able to significantly deal with the challenges that COVID has brought, and worried about that number. But as Sophie said, without somebody out there, we're going to struggle to do that, because even when they're not there in the morning, if it gets busy at all on a Monday, you'll see people that are, the police are going out there and finding people that have parked where they shouldn't have parked. So it's not ended that problem, but it certainly has helped control it on those very heavy days. So.
Is the Healthy Maine grant something that was just recently created, and is it COVID driven?
Yeah.
So if COVID continues indefinitely, does that grant stay, or is it just this one time only?
So this is coming out of CARES Act funding that the state got. And I think so they are out of money at this point. This second round, we got 30% less than what we would have otherwise qualified for, because we had already gotten one round of funding. So that's what they did to make it to zero and not overspend the grant. So to answer your question, Terry, we might end up battling COVID-19 next summer. And if that's the case and these funds were available, I would look at that. Mitch and I are looking at whether or not we might be able to get some assistance through the Department of Conservation, Inland Fish or Conservation, I don't remember which, because one of the things that this person could do if they were not on COVID-19 funds is milfoil checks and other more environmental protections to help maintain push-out in the landing in a way that wouldn't be damaged. So we can get awful creative, but we're just on a mad search, and I don't want people to think that next year we're going to have the same ability to do what we did this year. We might try, but it's probably going to have to look different.
And Terry, just to piggyback on that the Healthy Maine money has to be spent by October 30th. So there's an end date to it.
I was thinking too that along those same lines, that if there was, I know there's no lifeguard out there right now, but maybe a lifeguard could do a double duty. No. Okay, never mind. Erase that.
I just want to be very clear. We do not have swimming out at Gould's Landing or Netto Savoy. We don't have a beach. We have an erosion issue, and we have a boat launch, and we have a picnic area. Just saying.
So picnic on. Any other questions from others? All right, Mitch, continue.
So as we look into the fall, we've done a lot of planning and trying to figure out how to do this. And what we have based everything on is guidelines at the current moment, with how we could do things. Some of the challenges that we have they're kind of, I don't say holding us up, but that we're waiting to understand is, what's the school look like? How are they operating? What space are they using? One of the big challenges we have this year is with the construction, it's caused some creep into the areas that we normally use. And right now, how the high school is using their field use that we've used in the past. They need to use it differently based, as of today. The MPA had pushed out making a decision on the fall season till Tuesday, which affects them and how they operate. But in talking with the athletic director, Mike Archer, one of his challenges is that normally when you go up there after school, there are 15 teams playing at the same time and people everywhere. They can't do that. So even if they're going to do this, it's going to look different. So they're going to have to spread things out, which cause problems because places that we maybe normally used, we're not going to be able to use there. And looking at the elementary school, Asa Adams, they're talking about use of tents, which are going to we've allowed them to move out on the space there where the rec field is on the side. And there would be some space there, but not as much as we've had in the past. We do have the rec field down by, I call it St. Mary's, and maybe I'm dating myself, but that was the field when I was a kid, was St. Mary's. That field, we are waiting to kind of see how the construction, if you've been by there, they've taken all the trees down. And we're just waiting to see what that looks like so that we feel comfortable about putting people down there while they're working and what's happening there. Martin Park, we do have the rink. Once again, some of those challenges are how do we safely get there? The neat thing about this is our idea is about spreading people out. So you have 4 locations that are all different, which allow us to spread people out. We've been looking at the 10-person cohort type of model. With that, we are looking at a model with our sports is more totally skill-based, based on the guidance from the DECD right now. There is in a group setting, skills only, no scrimmaging, no games. And so that's kind of similar to what we were doing. We feel like we can do that with the equipment we have, with everybody having their own ball or everybody having their own piece of equipment or being able to clean that equipment. Looking at more of a 1 day a week. Normally it's a 1 day practice, 1 day game. But looking at right now, based on the information that we have and where the guidelines are that. And to be fair, I don't know how it would expand because we may not have room to expand. Typically, we play our games at the high school because there's field space and lots of field, and with less resources, it's easier to do everything in one space. So trying to manage that. But as of right now, that's not happening, and we're waiting to hear from the MPA. And when I say waiting to hear from the MPA, I think what's important to understand is not the decision they make, it's why they make the decision they make. I think we all have seen in the news, college sports canceling. And when you think about that, and then you say, well, how do high schools do it? Well, when you think about college sports, they are traveling nationwide. They are traveling via airplane. They are 100 teams or 100 people on them. They're staying in hotels. That's a tough thing to be able to figure out right there. We're not talking about the sport. We're just talking about all the extra stuff. That's probably one of the big reasons why they couldn't feel comfortable doing it. When you bring it down to more of a state level and you look at the high school, there are similar questions to that. So if we're traveling, we put people on a bus, we have more people together, those types of things. Are they comfortable with that? And then really what it comes down to is if they choose to cancel the season, but they say, look, we're okay with teams in Orono practicing still, doing skill-based stuff. That's what we're talking about doing because we're not traveling community to community. The question is about safety of the activity that we have. I think to go back to Cheryl's comment on guidelines, the challenge with the guidelines are when they're put together, they're really focused. There are 2 aspects to this. When you look at community sports, there are 2 sides to community sports. They have a guideline for it, but you have private AAU leagues, travel teams that are businesses. People make money off it. So ultimately, the state was trying to start the economy back up and figure out ways to do that. So you had folks that were lobbying to keep their business alive. Okay, we're a community and we provide an amenity, and I think we have a different responsibility to our community to find safe ways to do it, but within that. So the guidelines are hard. I'll ask the question that when you look at the DECD guidelines, they talk about low risk, medium risk, and high risk for sports. And soccer is in a high risk, which means based on their information, that they don't want to do that. Baseball, on the other hand, is in a medium risk, which allows them to play games. Now, COVID has not changed. Originally, when that came out, the guidance was no games, but it did change. The guidance on baseball changed. They very could come out tomorrow and say, look, we believe that based on the information we have, you can play soccer now, and we're going to downgrade it to a mid-level risk. I don't know if that would change our approach to this. I think we need to really base our information on what we're comfortable with and how we move into this, but also how do we look at, you're bringing kids back to school, we don't know what's going to happen. We're in a college community that's bringing people back to our college community, which we don't know what's going to happen, is how do we offer something, but also have the ability to contract if we need to. And so really it's all about being nimble. I think Sophie talks about that a lot, as being nimble. I will tell you, I am ecstatic that Megan is sitting on the Zoom with me and works for us, because that allows us to be nimble, because before it was a challenge because you were going in a lot of different directions. But our goal is to see if we can provide something in the fall that at least is allowing the opportunity for kids to get out in a different way. It is a challenge because I know they've gone to cohorts with the school and splitting them up. I don't know that we're able to do that based on what kid goes on Tuesdays and Thursdays and what kid goes on Mondays and whatever they've set up, because we just don't have the numbers. But if we keep those cohorts to that right number, I think that's good. We have been talking daily to Chief Lowe to get his impact on how this looks and what it feels like, and asking questions, because we also want to make sure that the program is there's some quality to it and it's not just thrown together. One of the things that we've been discussing is about that number of 10. And one of our challenges with a cohort of 10, let's say 3 kids don't show up, the level of that session with only 6 kids or 5 kids or 8 kids, what does that feel like? Is that a problem? Does it feel like there's one kid in this and there's one coach? The other thing that we're talking about is we're working with the university to see if we can get some folks that can coach skills and that are more directed on the skills. Megan has also worked on before, but is altering like a coach's packet, if you will, with basically 6 weeks of socially distanced drills and things like that folks can do, because we know the kids are going to want to play games, and how do you keep them engaged and not make that happen? We're not married to this decision. We are working through this and seeing what's going on before we move forward, and we're trying to be careful and cognizant of what's going on, so that really we're making good decisions for our community and we're not causing more of a challenge. So we're looking that same way with some of the after school programs, a little bit more of a challenge because we're talking about indoor space, and that changes things. When you're outdoors, it's a little bit, there's a little bit more freedom there, indoors. And I will tell you, one of our biggest challenges around everything is space. Indoor, outdoor is space. So we're trying to make that work. People often ask about the Keith Anderson. Right now, based on the information that we have, we really can't have more than 10 people and 2 instructors in that facility upstairs because of the square footage and the guidelines. So that limits us to what we can do. But I think all in all, from a programmatic standpoint, I think that's what we're looking at and trying to decide ways that we can do that and properly clean our indoor facilities and those sorts of things. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about that. I do have one last thing on the list, but certainly I'm sure there may be questions.
Anybody got questions for Mitch?
I'm sorry, I got cut off or something weird happened. I disappeared for a while. Did you talk about the status of our contract with the University of Maine, like what's happening with that this fall?
So we are working, the University of Maine, and we're working closely like we always would with them They're actually the ones that are working with the phys ed department to see if we can get some folks to help. They are going to staff just like they always have.
Okay.
We may be a little bit more involved than we normally are, but more of that is probably going to be volunteer and coach support. And that was part of our plan originally anyways, was having that operational piece still be with the university and us trying to support volunteers a little bit differently. So, you know, I think probably we're talking, well, I can tell you that I'm talking to the university more than once a day on numerous things, but Megan is also talking to our partners about all those things weekly. So.
Okay. I was wondering also about cost for our rec programs this fall.
So we are looking at that. I mean, our last year cost for a soccer program for 6 weeks was $30. We are probably going to drop that a little bit because it's less, but certainly, you know, maybe around the $25 or $20 range, something like that. But we are looking at to try to figure that out. You know, I understand that, and we're trying to make sure that people can access our programs. I think we've done a very good job to be able to keep our programs at that $30 rate in general, where, you know, around us, the programs are usually a little bit more expensive than that. But I think that has been a goal of ours to keep it affordable and accessible to everybody. We still have scholarship. We have our, even though we didn't add any money to it in the budget line, we do have a fund that has plenty of money to be able to scholarship folks too.
Okay. And I just had one more question, and I apologize for my wonky internet connection tonight. When you're only allowed, you know, a cohort of 10, do you have a plan to, you know, rotate so that kids can access? I mean, so everybody kind of has an equal chance to be part of a cohort, so that it's not like just the same kids who can pay.
Yeah.
You know, nothing.
The hard part about the cohort, the idea behind the cohort is that you're
Or
not
the pod or whatever they're
you're
calling
not
it.
mixing people. So the whole idea is that you're keeping those small pods and people are not
Okay.
mixing throughout, you know, going back and forth.
Right.
So that is a challenge. I don't disagree with you. And
Right. I think what I'm trying to say is, like, so if a student signs up and that's they're not every day mixing up, but like, let's say you have a session and then you have another session, you know, where I'm assuming that you can't do that.
I would assume that we would run this much like we ran the summer program until we run out of space, which is we had 10, and as soon as we filled up, we opened the second one
Another
up, and
one,
we
okay.
had 10. And
yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we're going to be bound here by space, as Mitch has talked about, and the resources, parents,
Right.
people from the university that can coach. But I don't think our thought, Cheryl, is we're going to limit a 6-week program to only 10 kids. That it's more, I think we're looking at how to provide this differently. It's not going to look like the program that people are used to seeing.
I guess I'm not saying it right because this is so new, is making sure that if you do, you know, if you have 10 and you run, I mean, if you get enough and you run out of space, that kids aren't left out because, you know, because they've been kind of bumped out of a space for a session and there's not enough room, that there's a plan to make sure that all of the kids in the community at least have an opportunity to be part of the, you know, the Parks and Rec who want to be, I guess.
So Cheryl, I probably didn't describe it well enough. We actually, the idea behind this with the sports stuff, the challenge is, you know, we've talked about soccer. We also do flag football, which is a little bit different, where it would be skills, and field hockey. Those two are a little different because, you know, we may have to cap that and not have multiple sessions because we just haven't had a lot of people
Right.
in space. But with the soccer piece especially, is our plan would be to open it, and then whatever numbers we have that meet, set a place that you're guaranteed a spot if you sign up, or like we normally do. And once we get that number, figure out how to create the cohorts and then go from there. So just like we would in the fall with soccer, we open it up, people sign up, and when that day comes that we can guarantee you a spot, we then put teams together and we go from there. And if we can fill extra after that, we try to. Our idea is that we would look at trying to do the same thing. We have a pretty good idea of numbers. I mean, we have history to go by and what that looks like. There is some wild card. I've heard both sides of the story. Like, we're going to have less kids because people don't want to do this, and I've heard kids that have never done anything are now coming out to do these things because parents want them to do stuff. So I don't know, and I guess that's a good problem to have. I think what we're going to have to figure out is how to manage the space.
Yeah. It's complicated for sure.
Yeah, I think that the key here is going to be that once that date comes that we say sign up before this to guarantee your space, that date is important, because that is the date that we then go to the chalkboard and figure out what we're going to do. We have 89 kids sign up. How can we accommodate 89 kids? And when the 90th kid signs up, depending on their age group, their whatever, we may or may not be able to fit them into that structure. So I think part of what we will really need are parents and people who sign kids up to do that sooner rather than later. And know that the deadline isn't the deadline because we're trying to be mean, but because when we do that, it allows us to build a program that will work for whoever signs up.
Reminds me a little bit of 2 years ago, the traveling basketball teams that didn't get signed in time, and there was a little bit of an uproar over that because they felt they should be in, even though it's pretty tricky.
That's a great segue into my question. Are the traveling soccer teams, are they working this fall? Do you know? Or
So by
Black Bear or whatever it is.
So the information that I have, and traveling soccer means different things to different people. I believe that Bangor Soccer Club, which does more of a regional teams, like there are groups from Orono that play in Bangor Soccer Club that play together, and some teams that are from different communities, Herman, Hamden, those sorts of things. They kind of play together. I have had requests to use field space, which I have said, if we can find field space, we'll try to help accommodate that based on these things, but trying to make sure that we manage those things. As far as the higher level ones, my understanding is that they have been actively recruiting. I don't know, based on the guidelines right now, soccer, the guidelines from the states, they're saying soccer, you shouldn't be playing games. Okay. And really, even in the team atmosphere, shouldn't even be scrimmaging. It is just skill-based stuff. So I'm not sure how they're operating now. Like I said, when I keep saying guidelines, that's what they are. I don't know if there's any repercussion to not following them. I think we would follow them, but for outside groups, I think that's part of it. And we're being really aware of that as far as our field use as well. I mean, because I think it's important that we don't just let somebody else come in and do whatever they want when we don't want our folks doing that. So trying to balance those things is difficult. But I believe in that way. And to be fair, I was on a Zoom call with regional rec folks, and there were 3 different answers to how they were going to do fall programming, or 4 different answers. I'm on the state calls weekly. There are 50 different answers about how they're going to do that. And the hard part is I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here. I think it's really just about what we feel our community, what the community needs are, and how we keep our community safe. And I think for me, the goal is this needs to be safe. We need our kids to be safe. And frankly, there's lots of studies that are coming out about kids. There's lots of different things that are happening that, are coming out daily, and trying to understand what that affects. And to be fair, 2 weeks into this, the school might say, look, we need to go remote. And at that point, I think we close everything down. That's what we need to do. We're trying to, I think the goal is, how can we be nimble? How can we offer things? I think, Megan's work on the parks and the trails and trying to focus on things that people will be able to do that are less structured and more outside and more independent is very helpful to kind of supplement what we may not be able to offer. So I think that's maybe a long-winded answer, but I'm full of those.
Slightly long-winded. So
Thank you.
Mitch, for me, I actually, I have two questions, but the first one's rather quick. I understand that MPA is going to be having a decision. I thought it was today or maybe tomorrow on what the guidelines are for fall sports. Is that true?
So they had originally set a date of yesterday. My understanding is they pushed that off to Tuesday. And the challenge with the MPA is that the MPA operates differently than, not under the same guidelines as say we do with the DECD. So they are trying to, I think they're struggling with that because some of these things might be different, and trying to, how do we align these things? So I think you're going to see some changes in decisions made on Tuesday. I don't know that they can wait much longer because,
it's here.
So
the other thing is that I don't know if we've explored this or not, but many, especially with this going on, many schools now, and this opens up to your competition could be completely US, e-games.
Mm-hmm.
Have we ever thought about that for the kids? That's now apparently it's become a big sporting event, and schools are like, you could be from from Orono playing Fresno, California.
So I actually can shed some light on this, and this is maybe where our relationship with the university would benefit us. They have club esports. The challenge with esports in general is you have to have a platform in which this happens on, which is frankly expensive. But we have talked a little bit with them about is that something we could do. The challenge sometimes is finding age appropriate games, and how do you manage those things? Because a lot of the esports, some of those games are not appropriate for most of those games are not appropriate for younger children. But those are things that we're having conversations about with the university, as they have just started kind of delving into the esports world. So as that happens, that may be an avenue for us to be able to explore, and frankly, would be really unique for us to be able to offer.
Great collaboration with the university, always good. Does anybody else have any other questions? So hearing nothing.
So I'll did somebody want to say?
I'm sorry. I was just looking at our chat, and I think we answered it from Jeff. Is the opportunity to participate is what I was thinking about, was equity.
Okay. I just want to finish with, it's been a combination effort, but working with Dave Myland and the university, we've been exploring how to figure out a way to help with the workforce challenge of hybrid learning. With the fact that you're going to have families that are going to have kids that aren't in school for 3 days a week, how do they do their jobs? We've been in conversations, like I said, multiple a day with the university, trying to figure out a way to see if we can create something. We're kind of in a tough position because we just have not had a lot of time to basically create something. So we're 3-4 times a week we're having Zoom meetings, but talking about this and trying to figure out if there's a way that we can use the relationship with the university, maybe some ed students, to try to create what we look at as more of a type model, because that's what we know, with some educational component allowing kids to be able to do their remote learning. I got to tell you, the bigger challenge with this whole thing is facility, and that's across the state. I happened to be on a Zoom last week with the folks from the governor's office that were asking this question, because pretty much what's happened is most of the state has gone to this hybrid learning and made that decision, and then has reached out to Parks and Rec departments all over the state and said, hey, we need help. Can you just create this program? Well, they are struggling like everybody else with, how do we do that with limited space and the guidelines that are here, and trying to allow kids to be able to have quality internet access and all those things. And some communities are more set up for that because they have different facilities. Ours, we just don't have them. And we're having to look at private spaces, and those cost money. And so we're in this conversation. I think we're trying to see if we can solve it. And I'm, we will continue to have the conversation and exhaust all opportunities and see if we can make something happen. But right now, we're involved in that. I don't know if Sophie wants to add anything to this, but I think we are certainly aware of it and want to figure out a way to help make this happen and see if that can happen. But talk about a lot of hoops for running a soccer program. Trying to figure out how to make this work with many entities and make it viable and cost and all those things for folks that didn't necessarily plan on sending their kids someplace 3 days a week during the school year. So we're working with that, and we're working with, the school is involved in that. They are involved in those conversations as well to try to understand what the needs of the students are going to look like. And we're trying to figure that out.
And one more thing is, if the university does close, as so many universities have already sent their kids home and just went online. I mean, that's another factor. All the university students will be gone if that happens.
So our experience is not telling us that all of them will be gone. Cheryl, I think you'll find that there will still be a significant number of off-campus students, because landlords are all holding them to the leases. I mean, they've signed leases through May or June. But yeah, and I think that's part of the whole being adaptable piece. Yeah.
Thank you.
Before, I think I gave you a brief update on the kind of trying to do that wraparound workforce support. But before we leave fall programming, I want to make sure people understand that what we're trying to do with our buildings, because we have a lot of programming that happens in our buildings with independent contractors that work with us. We have made essentially priorities. In the senior center, Meals for Seniors is our #1 priority. And then as we can wrap other things in a safe way, we will do that. In the Keith Anderson, our primary priority is to allow the 2 major after-school programs to continue in there. So Jeff Wingart and his karate classes, and Mary Drew with her dance. I think we will also be working at when the land trust is ready to come back in, we will want to try to support that, because maintaining our trails and that outdoor activity availability needs to be a priority for us. So I would just say we didn't even get to concert series. Mitch and Dave and Lori and Megan have done an amazing job taking an in-person large event and turning it into a virtual event, trying to have tickets at local business owners to still encourage people to go get their SQR code. Did I say it right?
QR code.
QR code. There we go. All right. I didn't say it right. So, I think this has been a lesson in adaptability. And I also want to make it clear that our Parks and Rec program is an integral part of our COVID education and outreach plan, which, based on the many iterations of signs that I've seen flying around here between Mitch and Bell this week, you will begin to see that starting to take shape starting next week. So we're kind of excited about that. But they've been really busy, and I think that for some folks, they think since they don't see summer camp happening or special events happening, that we're not working. And I don't know that the town would be in the position in the response to the pandemic that it is in without Mitch and Megan. I think they're both doing incredible work. And it also shows we've got incredible community partners that are helping us try to figure this out.
Good point there, Sophie. I think that if we have citizens out there who may have that feeling, simply ask. Sometimes when we don't know what's going on, we don't know for a reason. And Mitch, you have a difficult task living in a colder region. We don't have the ability to be able to stay outside as long. I hope for better like snow this year for actual events that'll capture, or at least capture the chunk of people who want to be outside. Is there anything anybody else has to comment to Mitch about?
I just wanted to thank them for all their work. I think being adaptable and being creative, which it sounds like you guys really have been, is very impressive. And keep up the good work.
Great work.
Get out of this one of these days.
Great.
Thank you both. The recreation is so important for our community, and we get lots of comments of people who want more. And of course, the challenge is what kind of more can we give it with the resources we have and the challenges we have. So thank you very much for all your efforts.
Great. So moving on, it's me. We're going to go to number 4, celebrating Pride Month, and I'm going to provide you with a subcommittee update. So as you all know, that Councillor Gardner and I are on this committee, and I want to give you an update on what's happened since the last time. Bangor Daily News spoke with Sophie and myself. If you have not seen it, I posted it a couple places, but there was an article that Nina Mahalaris, I hope I say her name right. It was on August 11th. She had interviewed Sophie and I about the crosswalk, and it was a really good interview. Through that process, obviously this is a quick fix. Going forward about having something a bit more durable, Councillor Gardner had brought up, she had a conversation with, I believe, one of her Emerge counterparts that was a city councillor for Hollowell, about looking into sharing the costs between multiple communities for that durable plastic, which we know costs, if we were to buy it by ourselves, would be like $9,000. So it's not a good option. But so there's details to come on that. Meg's working on that, and I think if we get a few communities involved, this will be a really good thing, because it could really totally lower our costs and make it something that's viable. Within that, I just want to publicly kind of make a notation that I'm a bit saddened that as we progress through crosswalks, and every community around the state really wanted to be involved in it, that Ellsworth chose to have a couple councillors not vote, one vote against it, simply because they thought somebody would be blindsided and fall and maybe get hit by a car by all the colors. But I'm glad that we live in a community where we see beyond stuff like that. So, and lastly, on the committee, creating that committee, we're going to wait just until the students get back. Meg and I felt that it was important to have voices from the university, and we're going to wait till they get back and find at least a couple students that could be part of that committee. So that's where we are for that update. Not sure anybody has questions, but if not, we'll move on to number 5, Scripture Memorial Thanksgiving dinner plans.
So I bet everybody's thinking, Sophie, that's the end of November. What are you thinking about? Well, the Scott Scripture Memorial Dinner, actually, we start planning not in pretty short order for that. And we have members in our community that are so excited that they are signing up in September for the dinner. And so I have no idea what the world is going to look like in November, but I do know that people are going to be looking to fill the void of what's going to happen with that. And I don't want to create anxiety in people that this is, for some people, I think this is more important than other holidays for them. So I would very much like to make this, for this year alone, a delivery only event, meaning that staff and council would come together in a socially distanced way, depending on what the environment is like in November, will give us how socially distanced that needs to be, and pack the to-go meals in a safe way, and then work with the police department to deliver those meals so that we would not have people coming to the senior center this year for the sit-down meal. I think for people's planning, it's important that we're able to say we're gonna have it. If we get to October and suddenly the world has changed and people can gather in tight spaces like that, especially people that would be in a population that is at very high risk, then if people could, we might be able to switch gears a little bit, but I want to at least be able to say that we're going to have the delivery and people can sign up for it.
Sophie, the people that come to the dinner usually sign up to come to the dinner?
We got a lot of people we weren't expecting.
Because I was just wondering whether we could do like a curbside pickup as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the idea would be that the handoff would not be in the senior center. Yeah.
I think this may be crazy and impossible, but hey, it's town council, so why not? I know a lot of people come to this for the social interaction as well, and which obviously we're all going to be taking a huge hit on that. That's going away in so many different ways. And I also know a lot of these, maybe some of these participants don't have access to internet, Wi-Fi, or Zoom, but would it be possible, just an idea, to throw like, hey, we're going to have like a Zoom turkey gathering or whatever. So anyone who wanted to sign in, could we all sit down and you can have your turkey and cranberry with Tom Perry or whatever,
I'm telling you, I have a brunch that I used to do once a month with my in-laws that we are still doing via Zoom. So anything is possible. It is, as Belle has said, we can support up to 100 people on Zoom. So I think that is probably a doable thing if we so choose to do that.
Not to create extra work or give us one more Zoom meeting, but it might be a nice thing for people who are missing that social interaction.
Yep.
It's a great idea, Sam. I think that if we were to go out and, I would think it would be fun as old get out to just go out and like deliver meals and, get everybody all prepped and say, make sure it's warm. We're all going to get together this time. I think it'd be a fun, but why not have something different? The world's been throwing stuff at us crazy anyway. Let's try something new.
Right. Absolutely. If it worked out, I'll try to make my schedule work where I could be part of that delivery team. That'd be awesome.
And that's a good idea too. Do we know what day yet?
Yeah. Yep. The dinner is always the Thursday before Thanksgiving. So this year that's the 19th of November.
November.
Yep. So I hate to push you, Sir Chair, but
Yeah.
I've got to open up the appeals board in 10 minutes, and I have 2 people that now need invitations to it.
Okay. So let's move on to the town manager's update.
I don't have anything critical to report right now, other than to say that the public hearing has been scheduled and so Monday's workshop is not going to happen. We are instead moving it to Wednesday at 4 p.m. because that is when we noticed the public hearing on the mask and COVID planning ordinance. I understand from Sam now that he is back to work, so we're gonna probably end up moving our meetings from 4 to 4:30. Sam, is that accurate?
Oh, yeah, I am back to work, so it's kind of, I do need to kind of work until 4:30-ish, because that's kind of what I'm supposed to do. And also Wednesdays, next Wednesday in particular is a Wednesday I will not be available. Sometimes there is some flexibility, but there's not this coming Wednesday. I apologize for that.
I took a chance when I scheduled the meeting because it was about 7 days after I could get the notice posted, so we could do it sooner.
No, I appreciate that, and I apologize, and sometimes there are just conflicts that just don't work out. I don't take it personally, Sophie.
Okay.
Not this time, anyway.
Excellent. That's all I have.
Great. Is there anything from anybody else before we close out?
Real quick, I just want to thank Sophie. You have been volleying quite a few correspondence issues and doing so with grace and a savviness that we have come to take for granted, perhaps, but we appreciate that so much. Thank you.
And I will continue to echo the fact that we're lucky to have a town manager like you. So having heard no more, I want to say thank you to all of you, and we'll see you again.
Good night, everybody. Be safe.
Thanks all.